welcome to Talks with T. So this week, last week I had Carson, and this week I'm just bringing in more of the deep talks and the good stuff. So I wanted to talk about it's a little cheesy, but kindness and just an unconditional love, and how that mindset went into my life. I even have it so much so that I even have it tattooed on my arm where it says agape, and it means unconditional love. And it's basically, if you don't know, it's a Greek word for unconditional love. And there's 3 types of love. There's brotherly love. There's brotherly love is phileo love. Aries love is a very a lustful love, and then agape, which is unconditional love. And so where does that word come from? For me, is that when I was a kid, I went through I had my dad leave when I was 11. And so for me, I was very angry. I was the type of person that it wasn't a sense of I'm going to go and be reckless. It was more I had my guard up because I lacked the idea of how of love. How can, if that can be just taken away and not seen, and someone can be not kind in that sense, what is that? I went through this phase where I was just so angry. I would go out. I would, if you took me on it, even dating, I would go on dates and I would leave. I would go on double dates and I would just leave. I was no one's going to hurt me. No person's going to hurt me. And I was just so angry. And I lacked that. I do believe in this saying, hurt people hurt others, because I was that person. I was that person that was well, I was so hurt that I rather not show my emotions, not show my feelings. I just didn't care. I was well, I had someone who saw that and just left. So now I'm just not going to show it at all. Someone really important to me, his name is Christopher Flynn, if you're watching this. He taught me the real definition of unconditional love. The patience he had during that time of my life was insane. I was chaotic. I was angry. I was definitely stubborn. And it was wild to me how someone can be so patient with me. And that represented that. That represented unconditional love. And as I got older, I was I asked him, I was you could have just, something I struggle with even to this day is the difference between waiting and wasting time. And I struggle with that because I was always well, people, it's not your responsibility to make people change. So when do you know? When do you know when you're waiting or you're wasting your time? And it took me, and a lot of it had to do with how I grew up was, he never gave up on me. He kept putting in that love. And eventually I was just I don't want to, I don't want to be in this state anymore. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to look at life like that. And he taught me the word agape. He said, well, do you know what agape means? And he's it's a love that is sacrificial. It's a love that has there's no, you don't gain anything. It's just given to you. It's something no matter what you do. And he was I want you to remember that, because no matter who or what hurts you in life, remember to have unconditional love. And even in a God, I was raised Christian, he was remember that the same God that forgives you, and has that love for you, show that to the world too. And that really carried on with me throughout my life. I'm 23. That carried on with me though, is I was so hurt. I remember just feeling I lacked emotion for a long time. Like I was the type of person that if you came to me and you said something, I'd be like, okay, weak. Like, so for me, and that came with the idea of like, I was so hurt. I was so upset. I was so angry, and I didn't want to show that. I didn't want to have empathy. And it really took a long time to gain that. So now where I'm at is in a place of, I find myself wanting to help people, wanting to be there for people, and consistently be a light in people's life. Like I pray all the time, every day. Is like, let me be a light. Let me be a light. Let me be a light. And the reason why is because I know what a dark place feels like. I still like gone through, like I know what that feels like, and like I know, just how someone, the emotions, the thoughts, all of it. And so if I could be a light to someone, even some random person, like at a grocery store, like if you go to a grocery store with me, I'm talking to strangers. The joke in our friend group is Teona will talk to anyone and anything, which is true. I will talk to anyone and anything. Like I do not care. And it's because if I want to be a light. And that carries with the phrase, hurt people, hurt others. So when you've known that, you want to help. And as I started, I think that's both a blessing and a curse, because I've gotten into situations where I was constantly giving and constantly trying to force someone to be the best version of themselves, when in reality, that's never going to happen. Because one thing that I learned was it took me to stop being, it wasn't like Christopher poured his love and patience into me and then I just magically became the better version. No, that took work. And that took a lot of admitting to things that I knew were deeper things than what I was saying. People need to put work into themselves to be that version. No one can do that for you. No one is going to be able to make you that. There's going to be people that inspire you. There's going to be people that support you. But at the end of the day, you got to do it. Whatever you don't change, you choose. And that became one of the things that really was like, I don't want to choose this. I don't want to choose to get up and be angry. I don't want to have this defense mechanism. There is a huge difference between, you give love, but you guard your heart as well. That is true. And so that was something I've learned too, is guard your heart. I'm not just saying wake up and just, trust everyone. No, that's not what I'm saying. Is there is a fine line of where you're still kind and you still love and you show that unconditional love, because you want to be a light, but you guard your heart. And that was something that I still struggle with, is I see this potential in people. I see what they could be. Everyone has that potential. But you have to want to choose to become that for yourself, not for anyone else. And, then there's been a conversation that I've had with a couple of friends where, do you regret being kind to people that don't deserve it? That screwed you over? Because there are a lot of people that have screwed me over. My father being one, Andy. And he's really zoned in. So, but yeah, there's been people that came in my life and I was always just kind in some ways. And I was just do I regret it? I think you could say there's been moments where I was I've been stubborn. I was nice people don't having a good heart doesn't mean anything these days. But then I realized, and I'm the bigger picture for me is great. I did what I could do and you screwed me over. But I think there's a huge there's a powerful thing to I believe that people are put into people's lives for a reason. And sometimes it's whatever that reason is. If I was put into someone's life to see what they to see a light or see something, great. That person could have been sent to me to see more of my worth or more what I my strength, all those things. When you look at things as bad consistently and you let yourself play that victim mentality, you'll never grow. You'll never find strength, because you're always going to have that victim mentality. And that goes back to the saying of like, whatever you're not changing, you're choosing. And that is a hard pill to swallow, because change is scary and it's something that we don't want to do. We're so good with comfort. We're good with, oh, well, I'm comfortable here, I'm good here. Or some people will say, well, I can't change, it's just who I am. That is a sad, sad mountain to sit on, like by yourself. That is, because you're meant to consistently grow. And until you realize that, until you wake up and smell the coffee, smell the roses, like you're just going to be living in this comfort, and everything will have, like something will always happen, because you sacrifice all the good things that could happen to you when you choose to be comfortable. There was something I saw once, was whatever you don't sacrifice becomes your sacrifice. And something like that, I think, Andy, is like, I can't even find it, but it was along those lines. It's like, whatever you don't sacrifice, like whatever you don't sacrifice becomes your biggest sacrifice. And it's true. Like a lot of things are going to have, like whatever you want, they're going to have to let something go. Even if it's good things. Like I've talked about back in previous podcasts about like sometimes like the people in your life don't serve in that season anymore and you got to go. Whether they're good or bad, like you just got to let them go. And that's the thing, is like consistently showing that I can't force someone to see, what I need them to see. But I still want to be kind and show that unconditional love. That's why I got it tattooed, honestly, was because originally I had a ring that had it engraved. And then I was like, I want something as a reminder, something godly, like something that reminds me of that. Because it's true. We're so quick to judge. We're so quick to like, to look at people and be like, and what my pain going through, that with my father and just like other, like relationships and friendships, what I learned was everyone is going through their own thing, and everyone has their own trauma, and everyone has their dark place. And so when you kind of sit there and you're just seeing it black and white, some things are not just black and white. I don't believe that either. There's definitely a root to what people go through. There's definitely like, oh, you act like this because of that. But it's not always something that you could just fix yourself. Like it takes work, and that person's going to have to do it. There were things that I realized, like I had like trust issues in a sense of like, well, if I put my guard down, anyone could hurt me. I didn't want that. Like I was like, no. And I remember my first relationship, I was very like hard. I was very like, I lacked emotion, and it took, us breaking up, and then for me to be like, oh my God, like I'm this way. And I had to fix that. I had to change that. And I didn't want to be that. I didn't want to be this like no feelings, nothing, because I knew that without emotion, like I would just be like a freaking wall. And then what? Like what is that? And so I had to learn how to be empathetic and kind, because I still like, I'm definitely like a tough person. But Brody Tansy, do you think I'm a tough person? Yeah, I'm a very like, and that also granted is comes from a lot of the way I was raised. Like I grew up at 11 years old. Like my dad left, and okay, there's no like, unfortunately, life doesn't stop because you're going through a hard time. Life keeps going. Like, and that's the sad thing, is like, you got to get up. You got to get up for yourself. 'Cause life doesn't just stop. And that was one of those moments where I had to keep going. I had to keep going. I had to keep going. And that affected a lot of how I thought, a lot of how I looked at people. And I just remember like when Christopher like said that to me about like agape, I don't want to be this hard person. I don't want to just be that. There's more. And that's when the prayer of like, I want to be a light. I want to be able to make someone feel joy because I know what that dark place feels like, or I know what anger feels like. I don't want someone to feel that way. And if that's me being like freaking crazy, like there was times where I used to have to get up at like 5:00 in the morning for like whether it was like work or like school, or like even like I used to sing at church, and I'd get up at 5:00 in the morning because sound check was at 7. I'd be like 5 a.m. like quiet, like drinking my coffee. The second I walk into a room, Auntie can vouch for me, I am screaming, "Ah!" Like, hey, good morning. Why? Because I know that, yeah, that could be annoying, but then that energy also, like, that's who I am too. Like, I'm just a very energetic person, but a lot of it comes from, I want to be a light in people's lives. And like, I want to be fun. I want to be that kind person. And so when the conversation came up, like, do you ever regret being kind to certain people, even though they screwed you over, or they don't see it, or they'll never see it? Like, unfortunately, there's relationships and friendships that you'll never get that apology. You'll never get that understanding. And it's hard. You know, it's hard to understand that. It's hard to like comprehend, because I've had like situations where I'm like, when is this, like, how do you just not get it? Like, or people are like delusional. I'm like, how do you not see that? And that's, again, comes to the point where not everyone is going to be you. And you just gotta do what you, and be that kind, like that. I want to be remembered as that person. I want to be remembered as like, well, at the end of the day, my heart was still big. Because no matter what, you might be miserable, but I'll still show up. And that was when important, because all I remember are the people that showed up. And that really helped. Like I always say to Christopher, to like, even now, I'm like, you didn't stop. And not everyone is meant, like, I asked, like, why, how did you know? Like, and he said, to this day, even me moving to LA, he always says, everything you've ever said and put your mind to, you've done. But you've set your mind to that. So, it is up to certain people to decide when is enough. Because in my case, when I was pouring that out, I started realizing I was losing myself. And so that was when I was like, okay, that's where that red flag is. When you start to lose who you are. There was a relationship I was in that I started losing sight of my dream because I was so invested in this person's dream. And I was like, I was young. So, it wasn't this, but I remember being like, I went abroad, and I remember being like, oh my God, like, no. I need, there was more. There were things of like, it was always the topic of me coming to LA. And then eventually that was something that just came out of the blue. And I was like, what, where did that, and I saw myself losing me because I was so invested in something else. That was when I was like, okay, that was that eye opener. Everyone will have an eye opener, because I still struggle with that. How do I know? I don't know. You'll know. Eventually you'll know. And you still just keep, one of the things that I had to learn is like, there were things that I would do in spite, because I felt like, oh, that would make me feel better. And as I started growing, I was like I said, silence speaks louder than words. And sometimes not everybody deserves your energy. Not everyone deserves it, because no matter what you say, no one is going to understand. Like, it doesn't mean that it's going to change someone. It doesn't mean that it's going to magically wake them up. I believe that everyone has that opportunity each day, and that is something only they can do. When you choose to stop playing victim, when you choose to stop seeing it as this life, as this like box, that is when things start to flourish. Because I don't believe that we're just meant to stay in this one little box. No matter the age, no matter who you are, no matter where you live, there is something so much greater for you always. And so for me, if I can show that through my kindness, even if you screwed me over, great. Because eventually, like I can sleep at night. And that's all that matters. I mean, I wish I could go back to some things that I did, because I learned a lot. Like, I used to be like really quick with my words. My words were like, I wanted to hurt you if you said anything to me. Like, I was never like a physical person. I was more like, my words would cut. And I look back and I'm like, wow, like I don't want to be that way. Like, I still struggle with that. Like, sometimes I have those moments and I have to remind myself, like, again, like, let me be alive, and like, let me reflect an image better than I did today, because that is all that matters, like, to me. And I know I'm going to screw up a lot, but it is that topic of like, oh, like, always the good ones get hurt. And it's like, but you know what? Like, we can argue that, oh, that sucks. Like, okay. But at the end of the day, you're growing. You're not the one living with that feeling every day. Because I've lived with that feeling. I've lived with that anger. I've lived with that sadness. And I was like, that's not a good feeling. And so when you show that light and that kindness, you wake up and you're like, it does suck. Like, I'm not sitting here like I wake up and like, oh my God, like, I just got screwed over. Yay! Woo! Yay! Andy, I got screwed over. Woo! That's not how you're gonna feel. But at the end, like, the one thing that I take pride in is like, okay, but I'm still like, my life keeps going, like yours keeps going. And you know what the difference is? Like, I'm going to still be that person that shows up, that does those things, because I'm not a doormat. So eventually, like, you got to let go of what doesn't serve you, but you did what you could. And so I've asked Christopher, there's been people he's poured out and it didn't work, but you know, he tried. Like, he did what you could, and you got to let go, and you still do those things. Being in a place of pain is not good. And you have to evaluate that, and you have to really sit there and say, well, I'm going to take accountability for that, and I'm going to grow. And then you're going to meet people, and your perspective on all that, it just changes. And so I'm going to leave off with, never feel ashamed or kind of like beat yourself up for being kind when you think someone didn't deserve it, because they do, because they're feeling that pain themselves. And so be proud of yourself for being that light, and just, you know, don't think that you have to accept that you can't change people, but you can still be a light to people. And sometimes that light, it's not going to be right there right there next to them. Sometimes it's going to be distant from a corner. Sometimes it's going to be like, I believe that you got this, but you got to do that work yourself, and you can still be that. And that's when you got to make those decisions yourself. And, you know, but, yeah, little serious topics for today. I hope that whoever watches this does, you know, kind of sit there and like evaluate, like, what is it that I could do or grow? And because every day is that opportunity. I don't believe that you're just stuck here and that's it. Like, it's a sad thing to think about, because there's so much that you could do and you're meant for. And I just hope that you do it. Just Carson's magic words, go fucking do it. But have a good week. Thanks for joining Talks with T. Till next time.